Tottenham beats Bournemouth 3-1. Well, there was a penalty, right? Am I wrong?
Oh, I don't even know why
Did
I
you guys
can't
get a pen?
remember.
I don't remember. Because I
No,
remember
we
because
didn't.
this XG doesn't seem right. XG 2.3 to 1.7. A penalty seems like there might have been there. There were a couple days past, guys. We're sorry for listeners.
Yeah,
But
I
nope, no
completely
penalty.
agree.
Because I remember us talking about Tottenham kind of being dominated in this sense, but the XG kind of says differently. Um,
Yeah,
so what were your thoughts on this performance? I'm gonna do some deep dive on some advanced statistics real quick, and then I'll get back to you.
yeah, go for it. Well, like you kind of just hinted at, it did feel lucky. I'd be interested to see what the momentum bar looks like because there were just long periods of time where Bournemouth were dominating Spurs. There's no way around it. That mid block was working pretty damn well. We didn't have bissouma to really be that press proof guy and break the press. And that's what I see here now is Spurs looked very shaky at the back with Emerson Royale back there, and Davies wasn't playing his best, which I think that's excusable because he's been so good for us. But yeah, we looked shaky at the back, so I think that's another reason why it felt like Bournemouth were dominating. The thing is, like, the chances they were creating weren't the greatest chances. They weren't. And there it is. There's the expected threat. They 1.3 for Spurs to 2.2 for Bournemouth. They were the more threatening side. The field was tilted in their favor, so there you go. I guess the XG, Son had a chance that was definitely a high XG. It was probably like 0.4. Regardless, I think something worth mentioning here is that Lo Celso looked really good, and he's continuously looked really good. Which, while Madison is out, I think this is huge for what Postecoglou is going to set his lineup like. He can have Richarlison and Brennan Johnson still. He'll probably move Johnson to the left, throw Kulusevski on the right, and then Lo Celso will be that 10. And that's not a bad attacking quad, really.
Not at all.
So I think Sarr and Bissouma surprisingly will be the players we miss the most. I mean, Sarr goes down in the 30th minute, and it's really sad for such a young player. And he's crying as he leaves, but it seems like he'll be fine, and he'll be ready to go for Senegal and AFCON. This is what I was thinking about when it comes to Bournemouth is if Solanke, I don't know the pronunciation, but if his hot streak doesn't continue, which it didn't in this game, are Bournemouth as good as we think they are? You know what I mean? Like, I would say he's the only player on that squad that is like a formidable attacker. Will Areola still look, or Iriola? I'm off my pronunciation game, but will he still look as good as he has been? He has 13 goals, Solanke, and most of them have come recently. So I think that's worth keeping in mind as well. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts? I just rambled for a long time.
We talked about this a little bit. And I know you mentioned the advanced metrics I put into the doc when you were going on, so I appreciate that. And something I had mentioned is just a separate talking point, and if Bournemouth just get a little bit of money to spend, Areola will be able to do wonders with the team and the talent. So it's just going to be real interesting to see how they decide to build a team in the future and how long they keep him on. Because right now he's punching above weight. You got to keep a guy in the seat as long as he's punching above his weight, you'd think. So that being said, just, I want to see how well this Bournemouth team actually continues to grow. And, moving on to a game that had a similar situation, where we felt like, and, the similar situation was Tottenham won because they had better players. Chelsea won because they had better players. Chelsea beat Luton 3-2. Chelsea actually lose on XG, which they have won the most games on XG this year, 2.6 to 0.99. They get out XT'd 2.3 to 0.8. They get out field tilted 72.5 to 27.5. this Chelsea team continues to struggle away from home, and Luton's tough at home, but Cole Palmer really puts the team on his back. And is
Yeah.
Cole Palmer that guy? And two, can he be that guy? And three, why is Chelsea's away form so bad?
I mean, those are all important questions. I do think Palmer's that guy right now. He has been really good for them, and against us, he was, or us, I should say, Spurs. Against Spurs, he was looking very, very good. And he's younger. He comes from City, obviously. He's got all the tools and has had, uh, you know, an education and what it means to play in a team where you're number 10. Um, I don't know. I think I think Chelsea struggle away from home mainly because they can't finish their chances. You know what I mean? Like, this is the one time where they're outperform their XG. Um, at home, your chances are a bit easier to finish, I feel. I mean, I know that sounds weird, but there's a psychological aspect there where you're more comfortable. It's the place where you play more often than anywhere else. You don't have fans, booing you when you get the ball, whistling when you get the ball, things like that. Um, yeah, this one screams the quality of players a bit more than Tottenham Bournemouth, but it's still the same common thread here is that Luton and Bournemouth, if they have people on the level like Dominic Solanke across the front three and in midfield, these games go differently. You know what I mean? You need like that 6.5, 7 out of 10 player, and Luton walk away with 3 points, and Bournemouth probably do too, maybe a draw. But yeah, Luton dominated them. 72.5 to 27.5 field tilt is crazy. That shouldn't be happening for Chelsea either, which I guess is a separate talking point. Like, there's no way that that's acceptable as Chelsea. Um, but yeah, it's a it's this weird thing we're going on here. I mean, I know that this has been going on forever. Teams that have more talent, more you know, more fortunate coffers, so to speak.
Resources.
Yeah, exactly. That's that's a better way of putting it. But teams that have those better resources have been around for a long time. But now that we know more and like we look at statistics a bit more, it becomes more of a pertinent thing. It becomes more of a thing that I think we should consider when we talk about how good teams really are, if that makes sense. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, the first question is Cole Palmer that guy? I still don't think he is that guy. I will say my tune has changed after that performance against Luton. I mean, he was that guy in that performance, but you got to be that guy in a performance 8 times out of 10 to be the guy. That being
Sure.
said, though, I don't know how much they spent on Cole Palmer. It was a little too much, especially for a guy that really, after you bought nkunku, is now supposed to be your backup 10. Like, he's supposed to fill in for nkunku is kind of the goal. And I do think he can also play on the wing, so I think that was a positive too for them.
Yeah.
But um, he's still young. I will say I've become a little enamored with him after the performance, and I was pretty happy to see, for his sake, um, a guy who was always on the outskirts at City, like someone like Phil Foden. Despite not always being the 11, he's never really been on the outskirts there.
Yeah.
So it's got to be nice and feel good for him to come into somewhere and be in the fold. We did say when Nkunku comes back, hopefully it fixes things. It doesn't seem like it has. And Chelsea actually does a really good job of not really conceding a bunch of XG, but they did in this game. And Luton, it feels pretty hard done by Luton. They just lost to a couple moments of magic from Cole Palmer. 2 goals and an assist. Clearly the man of the match.
Yeah.
And
And it kind of hit me when you're saying it. It's like, not to drive the narrative too much, but in a game where Luton deserved to win, a big scalp against Chelsea, this could determine or have implications for relegation. a few months down the line from now. And because Chelsea had the one guy, Cole Palmer, this time, other times it could have been Enzo, it could have been whoever. Because they had that one guy, now Luton, don't get those massive 3 points. And I don't. That's not to blame Chelsea. It's not like, oh, you need to buy the same players that Luton are capable of. It's just like, I think if you want a competitive game, which this was, but the longevity of a competitive game, and not see how it is right now, where lots of these leagues turn into farmers leagues. I don't know. I just feel like there's some weird things bubbling up here, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I don't
it
know.
does. No, it does. And it's just, I'm not saying that there's more disparity, but because there's always been a disparity, but the disparity wasn't in the EPL. The disparity was like, or the disparity was more in the league than it was anywhere else. You know what I mean? Like teams are now being forced to play their best 11 as much as possible when in the past you really didn't have to because, teams are pushing 100 points every year. Um,
Yeah.
the quality of football is just not as good as it used to be, I guess. I don't really know what I'm trying to say because, the EPL is fantastic, but back in the day, like Cole Palmer would probably be plying his trade not for Chelsea, but for Sheffield United, for like 3 million and not even 3 million, probably like 300K. But we don't get to see that anymore because the big clubs just kind of, Real Madrid included, snatch up as much as they can.
No, yeah,
Um,
that's a great
but like
point.
also we used to see like the Eredivisie teams going to Champions. Like there was no easy games in the Champions League. Like now you're like, oh man, we all want Porto or we all want, dude, man, come on, I got Bayern. What can I got
Yeah.
Leipzig? Like, you know what I mean? So there just seems to be a bigger disparity between top and bottom, both in league and Europe. I don't know. It just seemed like, like Alan Shearer was plying his trade for Newcastle, and Newcastle was class back then, but they're still Newcastle. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Harry Kane, like staying at Spurs would have been a Spurs player for his whole career. Like actually, Harry Kane never leaving is actually like very old fashioned. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Like
Uh,
think about it. Like Samuel Eto'o used to play for Mallorca, bro. Like he left Real Madrid's academy and went to Mallorca, and then he went to
yeah.
Barcelona. Like I don't know. It's I don't know. It just seems like guys aren't really class anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point because now, like you said, Cole Palmer probably would have been a more realistic player at Sheffield 10 years ago.
Bournemouth's a better way to put it. Let's say Bournemouth. Like
Yeah.
if we're comparing Bournemouth to today, because they're hitting above their weight. Cole Palmer's a good player. He's a very good
Yeah.
player.
But
He
instead,
deserves to be a
Chelsea
starter somewhere. Let's say that.
Chelsea have the option to spend 40 million, which, you know, 40 million loosely, mind you. It's not like that was their only signing or their second,
Yeah.
1-2 signings. Spend 40 million loosely on a guy who, like you say, he's good, and I agree he's good. But on a guy who, they're sort of taking a flyer on, and like you said, he was meant to be their fucking backup. 40
Yeah.
million for a backup. I don't know.
That's
That
crazy.
that's the I think that's the main point here. But